loud. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see everybody here. My name is Paul Huffman, and I'm the club president. And thank you for joining us today. It's on. Do we have a different one? A little bit better there? Try that again. Well, welcome, everybody. Hey, good to see everybody. It's now December. No, just kidding. I knew that. I just meant the time that it took there. Sorry about that. It's a bad dad joke. I apologize there. So, I just want to say shout out. Our meeting today is sponsored by Laura Gallagher and the Creative Company. Laura, thank you for sponsoring today's meeting. Thank you. All right, we'll start our meeting by doing our four-way test like we always do. So, what we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Great, thank you for that. And please remain standing for our opening patriotic song. Bob Dindorf will lead us in singing our national anthem with Casey Elkers on the keyboard. Bob?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Casey. All right, now our guests are going to be introduced by Aaron Embry. Aaron?
Welcome. Good to see you, buddy. Good to see you, too. Good afternoon. I will start with introducing the introduction of Margaret Pearson, who is a visiting Rotarian from Lebanon, Illinois. Please stand, Margaret. We also have over 40 guests attending with members today, and I'd ask all those guests to please stand so we can recognize you as a group. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you for attending today's meeting.
Thank you, Aaron. I guess we let him off easy today. All right. Well, for my banker poll number section today, I have a number that is a follow-up number from last month. Today's number is 304, and that's the number that represents the current number of followers of our Rotary Club of Madison Connect, Grow, and Serve LinkedIn page. This increase of 24 is in thanks to all of you who heard my message last month and connected to our Rotary Club of Madison LinkedIn page. I hope we can get more followers in the coming weeks, and please continue to like and share our posts to help us create more awareness about our club and all the great things that we're doing. It's a great membership recruitment tool for us also. All right, Alex Vitani chairs our Rotarac and Interact Advisory Committee, and he's going to come up for a quick update. Alex? There he is.
Hi, everyone. I'll be brief because I know we've got a lot on the agenda today, but we do have several of our students from the Rotaract Club here today. If you guys could stand and say hello. The Rotary Club is a really fantastic organization on campus. I know we're biased because it's tied to Rotary, but really, really smart students, really motivated, do a lot of great work, volunteer, fundraising, all that sort of thing too. So my 2 plugs today, one will be hopefully confirming our Meet a Rotarian Mentor program. So if you get an invite for that, please accept. We have a lot of great students that are looking for career and life guidance that many in this room can provide. And then if you have any internship or career opportunities, please send my way or send to the office. Will get to me, and we can share with the club for them. Again, a lot of sharp students there will be great additions to any of your organizations. So thank you, appreciate all you do. Oh, and thanks to everyone who's spoken or attended one of our Rotaract meetings. Last plug, our next one is Monday night, and our very own Sarah Eskridge is going to be speaking. So it should be entertaining. 7 o'clock, Granger Hall, room 1270 on UW's campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, and I'm glad you could bring some Rotaract students here with you today. All right, Jerry Thing chairs our Senior Service Committee, and he's got a special introduction. Jerry?
Thank you, President Paul. It is truly an honor for me to present Ruth Robarts as recipient of our Rotary Club of Madison Senior Service Award. Ruth, stand up, please. And remain standing, please. Ruth is a former colleague of mine at UW Law School. She has always been a thoughtful and independent-minded person, a diligent worker, and very active in many efforts to improve our community. Remember her time on the school board? The focus of the award today is on her stellar work with the Literacy Network. After retiring from the law school in 2009, she began tutoring in the Literacy Network's English language program and became a volunteer lead teacher in its U.S. citizenship test preparation class. She has logged more than 3,000 hours of her time helping hundreds of adult learners to find better work, support their children in school, and earn their U.S. citizenship. She treats her students with kindness and respect, and her belief in their worth and intelligence provides a sense of optimism to their work together. She incorporates volunteers into her classroom to ensure that students receive as much instructional time and feedback as necessary. She also has a long-standing weekly tutoring date with one English language learner. That person has improved her communication with her employer and now regularly connects with her daughter's school thanks to Ruth's effort. Ruth says that she believes the work of the Literacy Network is community building. Thus, volunteering at the Literacy Network, as she does, is volunteering to make the local community a better place for all. The Citizen Program Manager of Literacy Network, Jill Stendahl, states that Ruth has been a dedicated volunteer for many years who, in her roles both as a tutor and class instructor, has an impact that goes far beyond the classroom. She creates a safe, welcoming, and motivating environment for the learners and is a champion for them. She approaches each person with compassion and openness. Although Ruth rather characteristically says that her co-workers at Literacy Network provide her with invaluable and ongoing training and support, Literacy Network notes that Ruth's enthusiasm is an inspiration to other students and to other tutors and instructors throughout the organization, and it is forever grateful for her generous gift of time and support. No wonder she received the United Way Distinguished Service Award in 2018. Satisfaction as a job extremely well done and one that fosters a better local community may be sufficient compensation to Ruth Robarts' mind, but we believe that honoring her as a recipient of our Rotary Club of Madison's Senior Service Award for her vital work with the Literacy Network is not only appropriate, but really called for. Okay. Well, get in there. Make sure you're in it.
Okay, we got it. Okay, then that was selected.
Congratulations, Ruth, and thank you, Jerry. That was an excellent introduction, and appreciation for all your work for your community, Ruth. All right. Mary Donahue was unfortunately cannot be here today, but she chairs this year's annual fund drive. And so I'm going to give a quick update on our totals for our fund drive. So far we've raised $1,111 and $171 out of $150,000. So 57% of our members have contributed, and we only have a few weeks to go. So I encourage you to send your gift to the Rotary office by the end of this week if you haven't contributed yet, and it can save some follow-up calls for Mary and her committee. And I know we can do better than that, 57% participation. I'd love to see that number get up. Like I said, typically we do reach our goal of 150,000, and I know there's a lot of great organizations in our community that could really use the help. So thank you for that. If you haven't sent in your contribution yet, please consider doing that. Thank you. All right, Bob Sorge is this year's Member Recruitment Officer, and he's got a special recognition to present. Bob? Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, President Paul, and good afternoon, everyone. In 2014, our club created an award to recognize the member who has sponsored the most new members over the past 3 years who are still members of the club. The award is named after Dr. Mitch Javid, who was a chair of the Department of Neurosurgery at UW-Madison. If you knew Mitch, he was a warm and generous guy, and he was an active member of our club for 53 years. He still holds the record for the most new members recruited at 56. When he was asked why he recruited so many people, he responded, "I love Rotary, I believe in it, and I want to share it with other good people." It was as simple as that. Previous award recipients include Melanie Ramey, Rob Stroud, Dora Suniga, Susan Schmitz, and this year's recipient, for a second year in a row, is Ron Luskin. Ron, where are you? Ron joined our club in 2014. He has been active on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Ethics Symposium, Program, Rotaract, and Swarsinski Award committees. He chaired our Vocational Opportunities Committee and is a mentor to one of our Rotary scholars. Ron also served as our club's Member Recruitment Officer last year, and on a personal note, I'm in that role this year, as President Paul mentioned, and I want to thank Ron because he continued to work and publish our newsletter, which is a big undertaking and has taken a lot off my plate so I can focus on other things. So thank you, Ron. Ron has sponsored 11 new members since 2019, and they are Calvin Barrett, Jason Belangi, Sean Carney, Bill Connors, Rebecca Dopart, Jason Fields, Peter Gray, Alan Klugman, Kyle Nondorf, Jeremiah Robinson, and Baltazar D. Anda Santana. Let's congratulate Ron again on receiving the award. Now, before I turn the podium back over, I want to take a real quick moment to think about Mitch Javid, a busy neurosurgeon who made Rotary a priority in his life. He talked a lot about how Rotary brought great value to him, and he wanted to share it with others who value truth and fairness and goodwill. I guess it's over here. I certainly hope we all know someone who shares these values and who would make a great addition to our club. Maybe it's a coworker or a friend or a neighbor, or maybe it's your spouse. The process is simple. It's outlined at the sheets on your tables. And if you're kind of scratching your head about who might make a good Rotarian, you haven't quite come up with a name, we've also included the top 100 Dane County employers at your tables as well. We'll be reaching out to these companies in the next couple of months. And if you know somebody at those companies, you know the CEO, whoever it might be, you can put your name next to it and turn it in at the button box. And finally, I just want to say thank you to all of you who have signed up or have added the the LinkedIn page to your profiles. I understand that's another 24 people. And every time we have a great program like today's program, and our members share it, it sends a message out into the community as to who we are and what we do here. So I want to encourage you to do that, and thank you to those of you who have. If you have any questions about membership, let me know, let Pat know, and thank you for all you do. Great club.
Thank you, Bob, and congratulations to Ron. Appreciate that. And anything we can do to help build our membership and introduce more people to Rotary in our community, that'd be fantastic. Our program committee is continuing a series of interviewing new community leaders as a way for us to become more connected with other leaders in our community. This month, Paul Fanlin interviewed First Unitarian Society's co-senior ministers, who are the Reverend Kelly Crocker and the Reverend Kelly Asbruth Jackson. Sorry, Kelly, about that. Asbruth Jackson. And we are pleased that they're able to be in our audience today as well as view the video. Would you please stand? Great, thank you guys. We're now going to watch the video here.
Hi, I'm Paul Fanlin, and I'm here today with the Reverends Kelly Crocker and Kelly Asbruth Jackson of the First Unitarian Society of Madison for this discussion with Rotary. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Why don't we start by each of you telling us a little bit about yourselves and how you came to FUS?
All right. I came to FUS, let's see, this is my 22nd year of ministry here. I was ordained in this congregation in October of 2001. I came here after an internship in Philadelphia. Before that, I was in seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, which is where I came to Unitarian Universalism in the late 90s.
And so I grew up Unitarian Universalist. I was raised in Rochester, New York, upstate New York. I did my seminary training in California, and before I came here, I served a congregation in Massachusetts for a little over a decade.
Well, speaking of Unitarian Universalism, I imagine some of the folks out there don't know a lot about it. Could one of you talk about a little bit how it fits into the spectrum of faith communities?
Always happy to. So we are a spiritually progressive and intentionally pluralistic religious movement. We don't have a single set of doctrines or a single creed that is required in order to be a part of who we are. We believe, somewhat counterculturally, that it's better for us to be together in our diversity than to be filed out into sort of separate little containers into a sort of enforced sameness. So if you were to come visit us on a Saturday or a Sunday, you might hear a reading from the Hebrew Bible or from the Christian Gospels, but you might also hear something from the Quran or from the Vedas. We do a lot of emerging in the story of from various world religious traditions, and we are big believers in the spiritual value of modern inquiry and science as well. So we are united more by our sense of a common social mission, belief in the fundamental importance of life here and now, than in particular beliefs about what's going to come after we die. We're interested in those topics, but we don't have a specific set of answers to those questions that you have to believe in order to be here.
Well, you mentioned your co-senior pastor status. FUS has never had a co-senior pastor structure. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yeah. It works wonderfully. We're enjoying it quite a bit. I think it has a lot of advantages to it. There's a collaboration that is inherent in being a part of a ministry team. So we see ourselves as sharing one position. And so there is this shared ministry spirit that we hold and that we tell the congregation. It is not just about us in shared ministry. We hope that the congregation sees it as everyone. The ministers, the paid staff, the volunteers, the entire congregation working together, sharing the life of the congregation, creating who we could be together.
Tell us a little bit about the challenges of leading FUS kind of in the larger world these days, which is, of course, very complicated.
Well, we're still obviously emerging from the pandemic. That's a force that has had a direct impact on all of our lives and is a huge challenge faced by every religious community in the United States, really in the world. We are also in an incredibly fraught time in our nation's history. I think I don't have to say too much more than that. As a religious community that cares very deeply about the social mission of our faith, and in particular has a fierce commitment to the democratic process, It's a time where I think we feel especially challenged, that there's a lot in our wider world that we feel called to respond to, and also where we feel like our voice is really needed in the public square.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for your time today, and we'd like to welcome you to downtown Madison Rotary at any time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Paul.
Our thanks again to Paul Fanlon for conducting that interview. And thank you again to the Reverend Kelly Crocker and the Reverend Kelly Asproof Jackson for that great interview. And we're glad that you could be here today with us. Thank you. All right, we've got birthdays to celebrate with a bit of humor or wisdom that complements Rotary's mission. We also encourage members to make a gift to the Madison Rotary Foundation that represents their age rounded up to 100 for our Synergy Scholarship Fund. All right, on November 27th, Carlton Jenkins. November 28th, Moses Alsek. November 28th, Ann Lindsay. November 28th, Bruce Westervelt. November 29th, Stu Leviton. And he shares a quote from Marcus Aurelius. Give your heart to the trade you have learnt and draw refreshment from it. Let the rest of your days be spent as one who has wholeheartedly committed his all to the gods and thenceforth no man's master or slave. Thank you, Stu. November 29th, Stacy Nemeth. November 29th, Tammy Taylor. December 1st, Paul Fanlon. December 1st, Mary O'Brien. And she shares this Irish prayer. May you get all your wishes but one, so you will always have something to strive for. Thank you, Mary. December 2nd, Jim Kruger. And December 3rd, Greg Everts. So thanks to all of our celebrants for their contributions to the Madison Rotary Foundation, and please join me in wishing them a happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rotarians. Happy birthday to you. Thank you, Casey. All right, thanks. We have a number of members in the news this week, including Rhonda Adams, Ellen Ebert, Emily Grunwald, Jason Ilstrup, Carlton Jenkins, Jim Kruger, Joe Lanus, Renee Moe, and Robert Reed. And you can read all about them in our December newsletter that will be coming out to members as part of this Friday's email. All right. Today, our speaker is Dr. Niraj Nijhawan. He's a physician and founder and CEO of the Life Ecology Organization, which he started in 2014. Dr. Nijhawan graduated from the UW Medical School in 1992, and over the course of his career, he has overseen several medical departments in hospitals and healthcare systems in Wisconsin. His passion for nearly 30 years has been cataloging, practicing, teaching, and helping people integrate the latest knowledge from the realms of medical, social, and neuroscience into their lives. The title of his presentation to us is Brain Science Discoveries to Boost Resilience and Character. We look forward to your presentation, Dr. Nijhawan, and we've made a contribution to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund as a way of saying thanks for speaking with us today. I also want to mention that we'll have Q&A with our speaker at the end as time allows, but please wait for the microphone if you have a question. So let's welcome Dr. Raj to our podium. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, President Paul, and thank you, Rotarians. Thank you, Ashley, especially for getting me here at the last minute, so that worked out really well. And I was here 3 years ago, and we had a model that we proposed for how we could change the world. It was a dramatic title, but we've got some really good outcomes evidence to show that this model may actually be quite effective. And so this is a very hopeful message in a time where I know there's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of polarization. It's heartbreaking to see kind of how polarized we've become as a nation. But this is a very hopeful message of how we can come back together and really take advantage of this amazing creative platform that we've been given as Americans and get back to the business of innovating as we are great at doing. So Let me, I know I have to point this at the computer. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the title is Change the Story, Change Your Life, which is, there's a very interesting part of the brain. And by the way, the reason this came about, at the risk of repeating my story from last time, is that I was one of these kids who was doing really well athletically and academically. I skipped a few years of school. I started med school when I was 20. And then I hit a wall in the middle of medical school when it went from books to real life, and I realized I had very little skills when it came to real life. So anxiety came out, anger came out, sociopathy came out, narcissism came out, type A came out, all these issues came out. And so luckily, two angels showed up in my life, my wife of 33 years, who conveniently is a psychotherapist. She showed up, and then a dear friend of mine, Scott Streckenbach, who was a year ahead of me in med school, was like a big brother to me and really helped me to fall in love with self-help kinds of literature. And so those two really saved me, and I'm trying not to get too teary, which I do always. And so then I acquired a master's degree in clinical research and designed and ran a lot of medical trials, and the combination of self-help plus clinical science background and medical background is where I started to accumulate a lot of insight really to help myself get healthier mentally and physically. And then in the last decade, we started to teach an aggregation of tools to lots of people, thousands of people, and we've seen some incredible results. So again, very hopeful message. So let's start out with this one right here. Change the story, change your life means that there's a part of the brain called the orbital prefrontal cortex that is fascinating, and it appears to be the reason the Homo sapiens defeated the Neanderthals. Now, you ever seen a Geico commercial where you see the caveman, right? It's like the idea is that the Neanderthal is somehow dumb. Turns out that's not the case. They had the same IQ and were actually physically tougher than we were. So how is it that the Homo sapiens defeated the Neanderthals? Well, we get a mutation. You can have mutations in genes that are bad and they lead to cancer, and you can have mutations that lead to functional advantages. And well, lo and behold, we developed a functional advantage a couple 100,000 years ago, something I call the higher brain, but in particular, the orbital prefrontal cortex allows us to create stories about our lives. It's meta-narratives or life narratives, value systems. And so we were able to expand our tribe size as a result from being limited to 150 based on the social mechanisms that we have. Without getting into too much detail, we were able to expand beyond that to tribes of thousands. And that's really the reason the Homo sapiens defeated the Neanderthals. Now, this part of the brain is so fascinating, and it appears to be the keys to the kingdom of happiness. For example, if you do a taste test between Pepsi and Coke and you can see the labels, which one do you think wins the taste test typically? Usually almost all audiences say Coke. I won't make you raise your hand. But if you cover the labels, Pepsi wins. And if you have an injury to that part of your brain, Pepsi always wins, label or no label, right? So that's interesting. Soak that in for a second. That means the story that we're telling about Coke is actually causing us to change our biological experience of that substance, okay? So this storytelling machinery is profound in its ability to change how you experience this world. In fact, it predicts happiness, it predicts stress, it predicts addiction, so it predicts a lot of things. And so what stories are we telling ourselves? Right now, I think we're telling stories that are very self-destructive to us psychologically and physically, as Americans especially. But there's some very hopeful narratives that you can replace those stories with, and that's what this is about. And so, okay, I'll do this. Okay. So, destructive versus hopeful narratives. Go ahead, Jane. I'll point to you, and that'll be my... You can stick them all up there. Yep, no worries. So, destructive narratives right now, we'll talk about the fact that, no problem, that there's a zero-sum mentality that's causing us to implode psychologically, where there's this lost narrative going on right now, that there's a fear of losing status and a fear of losing opportunity that's causing tens of millions of people to really kind of have a collective panic attack right now. And this is very much a compassionate response to them to say, we have to help them. We can't just disparage them or ridicule them. And we've been doing that with this hyperpolarization that we have right now. But we really need to help them. And there's some really great ways that we can help them. And so the hopeful narratives are that you have the ability to really become a courageous scientist, as I say with the first point there, and become much more powerful and stress resilient than you realize. The second one is you can become more creatively fearless than you realize and have a life that's much more rich and engaging. And then finally, we need to get back to building community. And I love the sayings here that really fit with this, which is we've gotten to this really sort of atomized, to use a fancy term. We've become, we're famous for, or infamous for being rugged individualists as Americans, but it turns out that that doesn't work in a world that's changing rapidly. We actually have to go back to being high-functioning communities or tribes, and so we need to learn brain hacks to be better at building community, and there's a great payoff from that. So these are the hopeful narratives that we want to replace the destructive narratives with, please. So let's talk a little bit about the destructive narratives and where they come from. So everyone by now has heard about the dopamine, dynamic dopamine system. Show of hands, you've heard of dopamine? Yes, almost everybody. So basically it's a neurotransmitter in the brain that is our reward mechanism, and it encourages us to do certain things that if I ask you why is this part of the brain there, it's part of the nucleus accumbens. It's what I call the lower brain. It's really in the middle of the brain. It's the limbic system. And it's really designed, a lot of people connect it to fight or flight and things like that. And I ask you, why is it there? And most people say survival. Turns out that is not the answer. Because our average life expectancy for most of human history was 27 years, right? So if that was the reason, it's not doing a very good job, right? So in fact, it is survival of the genes that is the purpose of this part of the brain, survival of the genes. So we're designed, actually, this system came about, another mutation that showed up over the last couple million years, designed to actually cause us to be selfish on purpose. It causes us to be obsessed with our status in society being elevated, not being diminished, especially. That's when the dopamine levels drop. And being obsessed with opportunity and not losing opportunity. FOMO, fear of missing out. Those are two dopamine systems that are driving us right now. And so the reason this came about is that we've been hunter-gatherers for most of human history. And as I said, life expectancy 27 years, violence-related deaths 5 times greater than they are now, despite what you see on the news. And so it was a very precarious time. And so the genes, suddenly there was a mutation that allowed us to mate more quickly and more effectively by having better status and more resources. And that allowed us to mate and then pass the genes on. And then the genes said, bye-bye, body. We know you're going to be gone in about 27 years, but we've made it to the next generation and we're good. And so it was all driven by gene propagation, gene survival, not body survival. And so this part of the brain is now causing us to implode psychologically as Americans because we're perceiving a great loss potential. You can go to the next one, please. So there's been a big explosion in the amount of information that is generated. Next, please. And so you can see that starting with the internet in the 90s, information starts to take off. And then 2007, especially, both smartphones and social media show up. Facebook and Apple really take off in 2007. And that's when information really took off, information generation. And the problem with this dominant part of our brain is that loss potential is more sticky than gain potential. And Nobel Prize winning studies show that it's loss avoidance that is our prime motivator, not gain, okay? And so what you see, every time you see information coming in, you're always picking up and sticking with the loss potential. And that's why we're having this huge loss story that's taking over our orbital prefrontal cortex and causing a psychological implosion. For example, next please. On the left, loneliness levels setting records. This is all pre-COVID, by the way. I've been too lazy to change the slides, but they keep getting worse and worse, unfortunately. And on the right, anxiety and depression in colleges. Next, please. Alcohol-related deaths setting records. Drug overdose-related deaths setting records. And last year, in fact, that passed the 100,000 mark, and that was 70,000 just a couple of years ago. Next one, please. Suicide rates setting records, especially for Caucasian men without college degrees. They are having a real psychological implosion. And then on the right, young women's suicide rates setting records on the bottom right, and young men also starting to rise up. Next. So collectively, before COVID, we had 3 years in a row. We're the only wealthy nation of the 30 richest nations in the world, the OECD 30 nations, to have 3 years in a row of dropping life expectancy before COVID. COVID was gasoline on the fire, unfortunately. So we are having a unique implosion psychologically, right? And that's probably because our dopamine levels were really high because we were dominant materially and dominant status-wise. And there's an equalization occurring around the world. But I will also argue that our ability to adapt has diminished over the last 50, 60 years because we've been very successful. And so we haven't had to adapt. And so our adaptability skills have gone down, and we need to bring those back up. And the good news is you can do that within hours. You can help human beings become a lot more dynamic and adaptable. We'll talk about that. So this is what's happening with the current narrative is psychological implosion because of a perception of lost potential and this rapid change in the world and chaos in the world. And can I keep up with this world? Can I keep up with this train that's moving so fast? And that's why there's this collective panic attack happening. And we need to really help stabilize our population. Next, please. Okay, so that's enough of the doom and gloom, bad story, destructive narrative. Let's get to the good stuff, the hope narrative. So hope narrative number one, you're going to have to do a lot of clicking through, and you can put the whole thing up there, Jane. Thank you, Jane. Appreciate it. So on the left is what the dopamine system is connected to, and we use the acronym SAD for the so-called lower brain. There's about 5 networks that are battling with 5 networks on the right, which is the higher brain. And by the way, main takeaway from this talk is be more hopeful, because if we lose hope, we just give up. But if we can be hopeful, we are more likely to be constructive and productive as a community to try to solve some of these big problems that are in front of us. So that's the main takeaway from this. There's a lot of information coming at you. And if we need to get together another time here or elsewhere to talk about these things, I work on this stuff all the time. And I live in Madison, so it's easy for me to get together with you. So the point of this slide and the hopeful narrative number one is that it turns out then we had another set of mutations that showed up in the last couple 100,000 years that I call the higher brain. It's a whole series of about 5 different networks. And it turns out that this higher brain has the ability to shut off the lower brain. That dopamine roller coaster that you saw, which is the cause of our psychological implosion, that can actually be shut off by the higher brain. You have an unlimited ability, and it turns out you've got these 2 superpowers that I have on the top there. Mind control. Your thoughts actually control where the blood goes in your brain. Now, you can't be in both places at the same time. You can't be in the lower brain and the higher brain at the same time, okay? And so if your thoughts can control where the blood and the energy and the oxygen goes in your brain, that has profound implications when you see all the bad things that happen on the left from the lower brain versus all the great things that happen on the right from the higher brain. And that brings me to the second superpower, which is neuroplasticity, which is you have an infinite capacity to expand and shrink any neural network that you want in your brain. So basically your brain is made up, your computer system is a whole series of neurons, 100 billion of them, with all these little branches that come off of it. That's your nervous system. And so you can actually expand and shrink that to the day you die. And so we want to shrink the networks on the left and expand the networks on the right. And this is a really cool thing you can do with your brain and your life. And so we had a hypothesis that I proposed to you about 3 years ago on this stage, which is what happens if we teach people a whole bunch of brain hacks to shut off the lower brain and a whole bunch of brain hacks to activate the higher brain? What would happen? And lo and behold, here's what would happen. Next, please. And by the way, and we'll come back to this, but the intervention, if you will, to use a clinical science term, is about 15 brain hacks that we teach in 3 categories. Category number 1, courageous scientist, is paradoxically you have to be aware of your lower brain activating, including negative emotions and shame and guilt and pride and energy shutdown and body signs, all these signs of lower brain activation. You have to accept yourself as you are. So you have to overcome shame and guilt and pride to be aware of your lower brain in order to shut it off, which is a real interesting paradox. So that's courageous scientist. The next category is creative fearlessness, which is you can learn a bunch of brain hacks to be more dynamic and more innovative and more fearless in all areas of your life. And then finally, community builder is what are the brain hacks that we can use to help each other stay higher brain and be dynamic as a community. Okay, so that's the gist of the intervention. Okay, next please. And so here's what happens. So this is, since we talked last, we've done this, we've probably done about 400 workshops in every industry you can think of. These are each groups of 30 to 80. And you can see that depression levels plunge. This is severe depression and severe anxiety. You can see it's comparable levels across different industries. And this is just a 12-hour program over 3 to 6 months. So it's not a big deal. It doesn't take a lot of time to flip switches in the brain to become higher brain dominant, to shut off the psychological distress brain, okay? So look at these profound reductions in depression and anxiety. Next, please. Oh, and by the way, you may say, I don't have depression or anxiety. First of all, you might not know because you're habituated to your level of functioning right now. And so you don't know if you are in that state, and a lot of us are in that state, unfortunately. But that actually doesn't matter because lower brain and higher brain, we're all somewhere on the continuum from lower brain to higher brain, okay? And so even if you are, let's say, on a 0 to 100 scale, clinical depression and anxiety is you're a 20, you're towards the lower brain side of the spectrum. Even if you're not quite that low, you're still paying a big price for being on the lower brain side of the continuum. Let's see the next slide. So eating problems improved, sleep problems improved, which is a big deal. Energy problems improved, except for teachers when you survey them in May. That's the worst time to survey them. That's a mistake. But otherwise, the teachers did really awesome, and the anecdotes are really incredible of how they transformed as communities of people. And so really everything improves, basically, that's connected to mental health, which is really encouraging. That means groups of people can quickly transform and shut off the lower brain and mostly leave that behind and really help with all these fallouts from being lower brain activated, okay? So this is very hopeful that you have infinite capacity to go higher, and you should continue to explore how to do that. Next, please. And by the way, we got a grant from the state of Wisconsin and started delivering this to kids in Wood County and then Adams County. And you can see the profound reduction in suicide on the left, and almost all the other issues improved. And this is 1 year after the program was delivered. They kept improving on their own, right? So this is 8-week program. But this, if I showed you the after program effect, it was in between this, right? So it just kept getting better and better on their own, basically. So very hopeful that our kids down to 14, and we're going to try to go beyond that, can get this stuff really quickly and start shutting off their lower brains and going higher, okay? So sleep issues, we couldn't move, but that's I think has to do with, and this, by the way, this survey was right in the heart of the pandemic. So this is the worst time possible to survey them, and we still got these kinds of results. Okay, next please. So that's very hopeful that we can really shift our brain to reduce the negative impact of rapid change, chaos, and the loss story that it creates within us. We can shut that off and stay higher brain. So we are very constructive at dealing with the world around us rather than giving up and saying, oh, who cares? Now, side note, neuroplasticity, we talked about the ability to expand and shrink any part of the brain that you want. We now know how to accelerate that process, right? So this is really cool. Remember the implications of being higher brain versus lower brain, right? You want to have all the higher brain stuff, but isn't it really cool that we know how to accelerate the process of expanding your neural networks, and we know where to target it? That's amazing. And it turns out the two key predictors of expanding neural networks is how much time you put in and how much feedback you can tolerate. Reminds me of like when I say to you, hey, can I give you some feedback right now? Is that okay? You're like, it's like red, and you don't understand me, what I'm going through, how much work I've put in, like feedback, how dare you talk to me like that, right? All those messages start going, loss, loss, loss. So we have to get mastery over the dopamine system in order to increase our tolerance for feedback, and then we can take off in our ability to grow, learn, build, and connect with each other. These are all neural networks. Everything is a neural network, basically. And so you want to increase your tolerance for feedback in all areas of life. What can I do better? What's working? What's not working? And that's really critical. And what's profound from this work, especially the work of Anders Ericsson, is that talent and intelligence is not the predictor of being great in anything. It is always time and the quality of feedback that you get, the quality of practice that you do, okay? So that's very hopeful that you can create whatever neural networks you want to. You can be genius of basically virtually anything that you want to. Don't let the lower brain rationalize that you're not smart enough or talented enough or skilled enough to be able to do it. That's not true. That's the lower brain trying to avoid failure and loss, okay? So it's a very hopeful message of human potential. Next, please. All right, here's a fun little question. We're gonna switch. So that's hopeful narrative number one is you have infinite capacity to expand your higher brain and shut off the lower brain and reduce almost all psychological distress. And even if you get triggered, which I get triggered plenty, it lasts for seconds to minutes instead of hours and days and all kinds of horror scenarios in your brain. Now I'll make you move your hands a little bit here. If I said, what's the number one predictor of happiness and success at work? You get to pick from one of these 5 options, A, B, C, D, or E. Show of hands. As a motivator for happiness and success, economic reward. Anybody pick that one? Option B, recognition for a job well done. Okay, sense of play at work. Okay, a few more of those. Sense of purpose, almost everybody. Developing new skills. Okay, a few of those. Answer, please. D. Sense of play. Sense of play based on neuroscience and sociology is the dominant predictor of how successful and happy you will be. Okay, this is based on lots of studies, very high functioning organizations. Oh, are we running out of time here? Okay, okay. We have till 1:05? Okay. So it turns out that sense of play and joy and dynamism is the predictor of being successful in any area of life. And corporations such as Apple, Starbucks, Southwest Airlines encourage greater sense of play, meaning innovate and assess what's working and not working. Be like a child, experiment more, explore more, have an adventure with your work. We take ourselves too seriously, dopamine system, and therefore we're much less creative than we're capable of being. Until about 5 years of age, we have no self-consciousness, and then when 5 comes along and the self-esteem system kicks in and we're all self-conscious and we go downward in terms of sense of play at work, okay? Next one, please. So why do you want to take on feedback, right? It's a hard sell, right? Initially, you're horrified by the idea of feedback, but the reason is that as you learn, as you get feedback and you expand neural networks of knowledge, understanding, skills, connection, these are all neural networks. Every time you make a dot connection, every time you learn something new, it's a new branch on your neural network. And you release a whole array of neurotransmitters, including dopamine, but serotonin, GABA, anandamide, IL-10, a whole array of neurotransmitters and protein messengers get released. It's a much higher high than the dopamine of being validated or external pleasure. External pleasure and external validation, which drives us, is far inferior to the internal higher brain high of creative fearlessness. But what blocks this is our fear of the dopamine drop and looking bad and looking stupid and being embarrassed and failing and being rejected and all these things, all these narratives. We need to replace those and say those are hunter-gatherer Neanderthal narratives. We want to be creatively joyful, okay? And so there is a payoff from getting feedback and expanding. Next one, please. And that includes process maps. I think you should process map all of life. All areas of life can be turned into a process map where you can use that as a platform for creativity. What's a new step that I can introduce? Did it work? Did it not work? That can include for taking out the garbage or having a difficult conversation. You can process map literally anything, and that's another way to be creatively dynamic. Next one. And socially, same thing. Social networks can be deepened or expanded, and that leads to the highest of highs, oxytocin, the love hormone. And so we need to go to being more community-minded and connected because it's the highest of highs you can experience, and it shuts off the lower brain, and it expands the higher brain from a creative perspective and a connection perspective, and it's beautiful. And so we do need to move more and more towards community for practical reasons at an individual level. Next, please. So that's, you can have all those pop on there. Thank you. And so hope narrative number 2 is that your brain is not here for your happiness, first of all. It's here for its own agenda. You're a puppet on dopamine strings, worried about status and opportunity. But the reality is that sabotages maximum happiness. Maximum happiness comes from being really dynamic and creative and trying new things constantly and getting bumped and bruised, but also assessing what works and doesn't work in all areas of life. We can be much more dynamic than our lower brain allows us to. And so the tendency is to avoid pain and discomfort. We need to fall in love with discomfort in order to take feedback and become more dynamic. And feedback can be metrics, it can be coaching, it can be competition, what's working, what's not working. It can be positive feedback, it can be negative feedback. But the payoff is all these neural networks on the right: joy, power, fulfillment, purpose, meaning, connection, love. These are all neural networks, right? So I say, if I ask you, do you want to feel really good about yourself? Or if I give you all these other networks on the right, which one would you take? Feeling good about yourself, or all those 7 on the right? You throw self-esteem and feeling good about yourself in the garbage can, right? So this is what we need to do. We need to get over this whole self-esteem obsession and worrying about looking good or feeling good about ourselves, and get into being more dynamic and creatively fearless. Okay, next, please. So the last hope narrative, I think we're sort of running out of time, and so I'll just pop through this really quickly. This is a wonderful book, Steven Pinker's Enlightenment Now, which reminds us that we collectively have done amazing things in this world. We can't forget what's happened, and that we must maintain this platform for creativity that we have as Americans especially, but in the West, in terms of being scientific, being creative, and making things better together, right? So if you look at, this is a great run through of all the things we've accomplished in the last couple hundred years. Next one, please. Rapid rise in GDP, rapid drop in extreme poverty. Next one. Big drop in undernourishment and big drop in famine-related deaths. Next. Rise in terrestrial and marine territory preservation, a drop in the average CO2 production per GDP unit. So we're doing really well and moving in the right direction as far as global warming is concerned. Next. Not that we don't have more to do, of course. Battle-related deaths, homicide deaths was that one? I can barely read it. Next one, that's my fault. Homicide deaths, but also motor vehicular deaths. Next one, pedestrian deaths, aircraft deaths. Look at these incredible improvements that have happened in the last 50 to 150 years. Next, please. Rape and domestic violence drop, child victimization drop. Next. Improvements in literacy. Next one. Female literacy relative to male literacy, almost at 1.0, almost at equality in many parts of the world, and well-being indices just going off the charts. So we're doing really well, okay? This system that we have of science, innovation, and measuring what works and doesn't work, and doing this collectively really has worked. And we need to get back to that, but we need to really empower more people to be a part of that aspect of creativity and being scientific. We need to give people more of a positive narrative about the future rather than the lost narrative. Next. So this is basically the idea here is that we as Americans have been gifted this incredible platform for creativity, but it's built on 3 pillars. One is, character on the left, on the right is community, and in the middle is civil society, functioning mechanisms of government and politics and courts and contract law, and all these amazing things came together to make this a platform for creativity where we can have faith in the future and have trust and be willing to take risk. And so those foundations are crumbling right now. And so it's really important, and the good news is we know we can quickly get people to shut off the lower brain, activate the higher brain, and then collectively be more higher brain. And that's what we need to do. So we need to scale this kind of program up to really stabilize society as much as possible. Next. And so right now, keys to adaptability are all these. And unfortunately, we suffer by not having these 4 as Americans for the reasons I already mentioned. You can keep going because there'll be a cross out of all these because we don't have them right now. And that's nobody's fault. It's just, I think it's the result of being a very wealthy nation, being very secure, that we, lost these skills of being more vulnerable, more fearless. at scale. I mean, there's a percent of our population that's doing amazingly well, but there's large percentages that are feeling hopeless right now, and we need to show them that you are a lot more capable of being higher brain and creative and scientific than you realize, regardless of education. And so we need to give them these hope narratives to replace the fear narratives. Next, please. And this one just shows that incredible changes occur also in culture and community. Next. And you've gotten a taste of some of the brain hacks. Basically, you've got a good sense of the courageous scientist and being aware of your lower brain and shutting it off. You can also activate your higher brain directly with meditation and prayer and mantra and gratitude and a whole host of techniques you can use to become more higher brain dominant. And then finally, we can use brain hacks to bring us together as community by having more difficult conversations effectively and keeping us higher brain while we have really difficult conversations. Right now, everybody goes immediately to lower brain, you versus me, and that's where we're stuck right now. We're having a lot of these difficult conversations from a lower brain place, and it's just not gonna work. Next. And so we have to get back to being communal effectively, not hyper-tribal like we are right now, but more effective communities that can help stabilize each other psychologically and elevate each other creatively. Next. And so the war is in our brains. It's a lower brain versus higher brain war. We shouldn't be fighting against our two tribes that we've developed in this nation. That's a mistake. Because China is coming down the pipeline, India is coming down the pipeline. That's 1 billion people. We're only 330 million, so we have to be cohesive or we are going to be displaced. And these autocratic regimes will displace this amazing free market platform for creativity that we've been gifted. We need to work on maintaining that. Next. So there is hope. Because of neuroplasticity, you have an infinite capacity to shut this off, activate this, and for us to be collectively higher brain. And so I can stick around for a few minutes afterwards too for answering questions. I know it's a lot to take in, but I thank you for this opportunity, but I hope you take some hope away from this talk.
Thank you for that compelling talk. So as someone very interested in moving us towards higher brain at scale, talk more about how the people doing this work can work together, because there's a lot of people doing work on meditation.
Yeah.
Now there's work on pharmaceutical interventions, including psychedelics, right? You haven't talked about psychedelics, but that's certainly part of this, and it's happening here in Madison. So can you help get us to the meta level on how many people are doing this work, because there are a lot of them now?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't systematically surveyed other efforts. I think what's unique about ours is that it's an aggregation of a lot of brain hacks in one place. Yeah, it's psychoactive substances is definitely on the table. I've got lots of friends that are physicians that are moving in that direction pretty rapidly. And that seems to activate the higher brain pretty quickly, but then you go back to lower brain. So the issue is you need to use those to get the reset button, but then you need to have brain hacks to stay higher brain. So I think it's important to give people a more expanded toolkit. I think one intervention is not going to get the job done. I think you need aggregate interventions. That's the premise of this program and others are doing this as well, I'm sure. So I think that's the key, is that you need an aggregate intervention, and we need to just empower as many people as possible to do this kind of thing. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Thank you.
Just one more. Thank you. My name is Jennifer Weitzman. Thank you so much for your presentation today. I'm wondering more about next steps. It sounds like you have a program for the hacks that people can go through. How can we get involved?
Yeah, I can stick around afterwards. I can give you a card and we can talk about how to partner in different ways. I do this all as a nonprofit. I really don't care about money or any of that stuff. So it's the desire is to give back for this amazing opportunity I've had as an American to do this kind of thing. So I'm really grateful to be an American. So I'm interested in any kind of partnership to say, let's see what magic we can create with different fields coming together and see what we can do. So yeah, feel free. I have some cards. I can give you a card and we can connect. And like I said, we can always have another gathering and talk some more about this, and who knows. All right. Thank you. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Dr. Nijhawan. I think a lot of what you talked about is what Rotary is, right? Acting collectively to build community. It's a lot about who we are and why we come together and have almost 200 people in the room here today together is to work on this and build on hope. I think that's what Rotary is about too in our club. So thank you for your presentation today. Appreciate that. And I will hope that you'll join us next week when we're going to hear from John Malik, who is the new artistic director for the Madison Ballet. The program will introduce a few short performances out on the dance floor, and I've been told as well that this will be an entertaining program. So I hope you join us next week for that. And with that, we are adjourned.